Bob Kipp, who was the city manager of Kansas City, Bruce Langan, who was the executive director of the Volcker Commission, Ray Marshall, who many of you know, Bill Milliken, who was governor of Michigan, and Neil Pierce, Charlie Royer, who was mayor of Seattle, Max Sherman of the LBJ School, Eddie Williams. So it is a group of people who have spent a lot of time together. We held hearings all over the country, 6 hearings at which we went together and talked with people like yourselves about state and local government, what they're doing, what their frustrations are, what they care about. And we received initially support for the Winter Commission from the Florence and John Schuman Foundation, which is now headed by Bill Moyers. And Bill Moyers has been a very key person in the work of our commission. And in fact, one of our hearings, which we held, was held in Chicago. We had hearings in Chicago, Austin, Sacramento, Philadelphia, and Chicago. I think that there's one other city, but anyway, that's the hearings. And the Chicago hearing we did for National Public Television. We got a bus, and we went all around Chicago talking to public officials and neighborhood community-based organization leaders about things wonderful things like you recognize with your awards that people are doing out there at the ground level where government and public service really happens. And then we had a meeting of the commission, which Bill Moyers was the moderator of, with Governor Winter and members of the commission, and we had the people come in. It's a good tape. It was an hour program, and it shows the people in the communities, police chiefs and head of social agencies, and then it has us in a pretty lively way talking about the kinds of things that are very hard to get through to people. It is terrific that President Clinton and Vice President Gore have put this at the top, making government more efficient, productive, what you're all about, and getting people to believe again in our capacity to do things in our political and governmental system. In addition to the Schuman Foundation, which has been our main supporter, we've received really excellent support from the Carnegie Corporation and the Kaiser Foundation. The Kaiser Foundation is supporting a report on health, which the Winter Commission will issue next week. We'd be happy to provide copies of that, and I can talk about it, but I'm not going to focus on that in my remarks. And also the Ford Foundation. And the Ford Foundation has made a decision which I really strongly agree with, and that is that this report, it looks nice and it reads well, I think, I hope, but it shouldn't just be another report that you have on the shelf and you say, I remember it. We've got to get out in the country and talk to people, and we've got to keep working with our ideas on health, on state and local relations, state-local relations, and local government, which I want to have as the focus of a subsequent report of the Winter Commission. So we are funded by Ford to do several things, to go out around the country and hold jointly sponsored meetings with groups like the LBJ School or the Rockefeller Institute or other groups around the country, to have people come in and talk, not just hear talking heads, but like you're going to do today, and I hope you will do afterwards, talk about the ideas that the Winter Commission is working with and your ideas. Now, another thing that we've done is a special issue, well, I wouldn't know if I'd call it a special issue, but anyway, excerpts of our report were published in the August issue of Government Magazine and Governing Magazine. And in fact, attached to my talk, which I'm going to go into in a minute, is the excerpts that appeared in Governing Magazine. So you can see the highlights. There's an introduction by Alan Ehrenholt, where he has some really good things to say about the Winter Commission, and then there are excerpts from the report. But Governing Magazine didn't just print the excerpts and leave it at that. they had an overleaf, which was a questionnaire, and they asked readers to, and they circulated this issue with help from the Ford Foundation to a larger number of people, and they asked people to check off, whether you agree with and how you view the 10 recommendations of the Winter Commission. And we've already gotten back 6,000 replies. And so we will have subsequent statements from the Commission of what people think about what we've done and what other ideas come forward. So we have additional reports on health and state local government and other topics. We have hearings, we have meetings, conferences around the country, and then with Governing Magazine and the Ford Foundation, we're having a national conference in Washington in November, which Governing Magazine will use for a special follow-up to the Winter Commission in Governing Magazine. So we are not just trying to write something you can say, oh, I read that, or I have it on my shelf. We are trying to be catalysts to stir the waters and stir the people. And so that's really the first chamber, to tell you about the Commission, about its support, about its members, about its process, about our future, and about our ideas as we think about our work at this time when there's a lot of frustration, maybe a special, deep frustration in the country that we need to address and are addressing, thinking hard, rethinking the ideas and aims and procedures, the workings of American governmental systems. Now, second, I said I would talk a little bit about the Commission and what it found. And that's really pretty easy to do. You can sing along with me if you look at the notes, because the recommendations are highlighted right here, the 10 recommendations. They're discussed in summary in these excerpts, which were in Governing Magazine, and some of you have, and others of you can write to us and get copies of the full report, which we'll be glad to send anyone who wants a copy of the full report. And what does the report say? What it says in a very strong way, I think, is that leadership matters. That people who care about ideas that the citizens want to have reflected in what their government does and push those ideas down into government as leaders and managers and workers in governmental systems are very important people. And there is, I think, somewhat in the tradition of the Brownlow Commission, a very special emphasis in this report on the executive, strengthening the executive, like New Jersey, actually, where you have New Jersey has one elected official, no lieutenant governor, no anything else. To temper the fragmentation, number 2 recommendation, by getting rid of programs and agencies that have outlived their usefulness and using this very ingenious base closing technique to do that kind of hard work, and we explain that a little bit in these excerpts and more in the report. We talk about the executive budget, keeping it whole and looking at it as a whole. We talk about flattening the bureaucracy so you don't have so many layers where people fall all over each other and buck things here and buck things there. We talk about deregulation, and Brookings has a book coming out, which Mel, who's here, Mel Dubnik is here, and I have chapters in on the civil service, making it possible for leaders in government to pick the people they want and deploy them in good ways that are balanced and sensible to carry out their purposes. So civil service reform, streamlining procurement. We have awful problems with procurement in state local government and nationally too, and you all know this. I mean, it's tremendously intricate and complex even for little things like ashtrays, and not only that, but price is everything. So that to get quality, you can't, work with your providers in a way that that gets you what you really need the way you need it and want it, and can